recording started. Okay. Call this District of Clearwater regular council meeting for Tuesday, November 5th, 2024 to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging we're fortunate to be gathered today on the territory of the Simp people who have been caretakers of this land since time immemorial. There is an agenda to be adopted. What is the will of council? Moved by Councillor Bratton, seconded by Councillor Matheson. All those in favor? Are there any declaration of known conflict of interest or pecuniary interests that anybody would like to state? Councillor Sim. 16.1, which is road maintenance contract. Okay, thank you. Any further? If not, moving on to item 7.1. Medevac Heli project subject matter experts. We have a lot of people online. Looks like the Brady Bunch, kinda, or so. Welcome, and we'll turn it over to you, whoever's speaking, in what order or whatever.
Thanks, Mayor Blackwell. So I think probably prudent that we introduce the Brady Bunch as you've so labeled us today. So I'll just begin with the Interior Health folks, and then I'll pass over to the other folks on the call from BCEHS. I'm Karen Cooper. I'm the Executive Director for the Thompson Cariboo Rural Portfolio. I also oversee the Trauma Network, and with that, I'll pass it over to one of our trauma physicians from Royal Inland. Go ahead, Ravi.
Yep, Ravi Sunder. I'm an emergency room doctor and trauma team leader in Kamloops, and I'm also the Regional Transport Director for Interior Health. Thank you for having us.
Brent?
Yes, good afternoon. Brent Hobbs. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm the Executive Director in Interior Health for patient transportation, access and flow, so movement of patients between hospitals and emergency response.
Lauren?
Hi, I'm Lauren Sisley. I'm the Executive Director for Corporate Services for Interior Health, which oversees all of our facilities.
Heidi?
Good afternoon, Heidi Schilling. I'm the Clinical Operations Manager here in Clearwater.
Ian, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Sure, I'm Ian Lightbody. I'm the Manager of Aviation Operations for Rotary Wing for BC Emergency Health Services.
And David.
And David Brown. I'm with Ground Effect Aerodrome Consulting, and we are the heliport consultant who worked on the study.
And I'm not sure who the Director of Finance is, whether that's an IH or whether a municipal...
That's one of ours, thanks.
Okay, I had a feeling it was. So, David, can I pass it back to you then? I know we had a discussion prior to today.
Yes, I think there were a number of questions that came out of a previous council meeting, and I know Elsid was kind of heading this up, and was trying to have us at least look at some of those questions and try to get a response back to council for the response on those.
And yeah, Your Worship, if I may.
Go ahead.
So this was presented at the August 20th council meeting. It was deferred at the time. Council really wanted to sort of get some subject matter experts to weigh in on some of these sort of unanswered questions that council felt needed to be looked at. This is the dream team right here. So any questions council feels they have, I'll kind of summarize some of the questions that I felt were asked at the last meeting. Helicopter compatibility, environmental impact in terms of some of the forested areas that this would impact on the hospital grounds, cost and community contributions, grant funding, sort of how it tied into emergency management operations, as well as, and this was a big one, was sort of the usage statistics. If this would increase the number of times that it would be utilized by the hospital, if that would sort of how that tied into sort of patient care. Night operations, whether that this would allow night operations, and sort of a big question was Interior Health's role. And obviously, I'll let them speak to that.
Okay. What was the first one? Maybe we'll do them one at a time.
One at a time.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Sim has a question. We'll start with that.
Shelley Sim, thanks very much for everybody for being here. I think because we've got the dream team, maybe the question is, in your professional capacities, what would be the advantages that you would like to see our small community of 2,200 people take this on? Because it's a significant project, but we all know somebody who has been impacted by the absolute dire need for it. So it's a heavy way. So your experience, and I'm certainly interested in the ER physician about what this actually, means, and your perspective on this particular project.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Shelley. Go ahead, Ravi.
Yeah, no, I think that there are certain cases that are actually relatively few and far between where closer helicopter access could make a difference. In Interior Health, we're well aware that a lot of our transport is limited by conditions, weather conditions, nighttime flying, those sorts of things, and that a helicopter is not a panacea to everything. So it is, while it would be nice in very certain conditions, I think the actual number of cases in a small center, and I'm a person who grew up in a town of 2,000, would be relatively infrequent. And I'll ask Brent, who is my dyad partner with Interior Health and who knows this file even better than me because it's what he works on day in and day out, whereas I do clinical work for most of my stuff, to get his opinion on this as well.
Thanks, Ravi. And thanks for the question, Councillor Sim. From a public health perspective, anything we can do as a system and as a community to improve the timeliness of critical care patient travel between the accident scene or Clearwater Hospital and Royal Inland Hospital is good for patient care. What Dr. Sunder has said, the helicopter is not a panacea, but it definitely makes a difference, especially in people who are traumatically injured. It is not going to, for example, change the treatment for someone who's had a heart attack. The clinicians in Clearwater are perfectly capable of managing that. And those patients are transported to Royal Inland appropriately by ground ambulance. So these systems have to work together, especially when the weather is down and at night. You will always need to rely on ground systems, but anything we can do to improve timeliness of transport to Royal Inland Hospital is a very good thing for patient care. And the research is quite clear on that, especially for trauma patients. Then if you think about it, what will make the difference is instead of landing in an airfield, or I think they land at one of the operators now, right? So when you land at the hospital, you're saving time, at least 20 minutes on the loading of the patient at the very least. So versus landing at a spot like maybe 10 or 15 minutes away. And I would point to communities like Revelstoke and Grand Forks that are of a similar size, and they have invested in community fundraising for a heliport build. And those heliports have been used.
Okay, thank you. This didn't come, I wasn't here for the last meeting or the meeting that this came up last time. But my understanding in talking to Sun Peaks is that there is the ability to potentially grant fund the vast majority, if not the entire construction costs of this. Is that something that is out there, and could that be explained to council? Because I don't think it came up in past reports.
I can maybe speak to that. So we're BCHS. My boss actually sits on the board that it's an MOTI, Ministry of Transportation, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you got some funding through that same process to fund Dave Brown's efforts here.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly. And so it would be the same process that you would do that, but this time you would be building infrastructure. And Sun Peaks did something like that to try and build a heliport, or to build a heliport at the Sun Peaks town.
Yeah, they had an issue in the end. Councillor Herring has a question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, two questions from me. First was, how many incidents are there where patient transport is delayed because we don't have a helipad, where, for example, someone is going to be evacuated by air ambulance and that transport is not available because of the lack of helipad. Because currently Blackpool Fire has been supporting landing zones. I know we could land the helicopter on the highway in certain places. Is that something that happens regularly? I'm just trying to assess what the need level is here. And then the second part is, I know in the past BC Ambulance trauma protocols dictated that Clearwater Hospital would be bypassed in the event of a severe trauma. So for a purple or red trauma transfer, my understanding is the patient would be transported directly to Kamloops without stopping at Dr. Helmgen Hospital. So does this speed up that transport if in fact they're now coming into Clearwater to meet the helicopter rather than having the helicopter meet them on the highway wherever this accident happened?
I can start and then maybe Doug. Yeah, just anytime you can land at the hospital, you're saving time. So every time the helicopter lands currently, they're a distance away from the hospital, and there are delays associated with that at either end. And then Doug, maybe you can speak to how that hospital helipad could be used for 911 incidents that happen in the catchment area where they can meet there.
Absolutely. And just to be really transparent about your question, or the answer to your question, is I don't have the delay information, but what I do know is how many patients have been transported by rotary wing helicopter out of that area. And if we look at just Clearwater, the town, it's very, very low. But if we look at Clearwater, what we would call our beat or our response area, so over the past 2, 4, 5 and a bit years, November to date, 2024 to date, there's about 37 patients in the Clearwater area and about 14 out of the Blue River area. Most of those would probably be not seen responses. There's a lot of challenges in landing on the highway, especially in areas north of Clearwater, just because the lack of other services to secure the highway for our helicopter to land. So that's a total of 51 patient transports, and that's not even looking at the data for how many responses did we have where we were anticipating that there was going to be a significant event that needed to be transported by helicopter but wasn't. So even in our trauma protocol that we have with bypass, we could intercept at the hospital, and we do this in all sorts of areas of the province where we have the local paramedics go up at ground, they retrieve the patient, but then they meet the critical care paramedics because the timing lines up, and they would meet at the local hospital, or we would be slightly ahead of them and we would wait for them to arrive at the hospital for that critical care, that advanced care, to then fly them either to Kamloops, and Brent could speak better to this, either to Kamloops or it would be directly to Kelowna.
Thank you. Councillor Matheson.
Yes, thanks for showing up today. It's great information. And just like to mention that I am a stroke survivor, and I'm only sitting here because of timely access to a hospital.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, would this pad be available for private use? I'm thinking helicopters from heli skiing companies, logging companies, things like that as well. And
I can maybe.
sorry.
Okay, go ahead. I can maybe speak to that first one. Go ahead.
Okay. And how many ambulances have we had in the area here that have had an inability to transport due to accidents, road blockages, where helicopter access would have been our only option?
David, do you want to take the first one?
Sure, I'll lead out on that first one. Essentially, it's up to the owner of the heliport to decide or determine usage. On all hospital heliports, we typically use what we call PPR, which is pilot prior request, so that no one can come and use the heliport unless they actually make a phone call to the hospital and say, we'd like to use your heliport. And that includes all BC Air Ambulance helicopters as well. They're required to make that phone call. Now, if someone phones and they are a private operator or a commercial operator, either working for BC Hydro or in forestry, and they have an injured worker and they want to bring them to the hospital, then there has to be a determination as to whether the helicopter that they are flying or intend to use the heliport will meet the physical and operational requirements of the heliport. Now, in our case, this particular heliport is probably one of the most flexible in terms of the heliport criteria, in terms of the types of helicopters that it can accommodate and the size of helicopter that it accommodate. So it would be a very unusual situation for an outside helicopter not to be able to use the heliport that's planned from a physical perspective, simply because it's designed to accommodate helicopters up to 17.5 meters total length. And on the other end of the scale, it would be fully capable of being able to permit single engine helicopters to land there should the hospital decide that that's appropriate.
And Karen, I can add to Councillor Matheson's question is Revelstoke is a great example. So there are lots of heli skiing operations up there, and if there's an injured skier, those local operators will fly directly to the community-built heliport at the hospital.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
And from
further questions? Oh,
I was just going to add some context to that from a BC Ambulance point of view.
Part 2 to that. Go ahead.
Yeah, you betcha. So it's about the data about the highway blockage, and then industry, I think, is a really important piece that I've talked about with our data folks, and we just don't have visibility on that, but believe that there is a portion of work that's happening out there with industry that's using helicopters to fly their injured workers. We just don't have that information. So I'm so happy to hear that could be a possibility that it could land at the hospital. And then even if that meant that our critical care paramedics needed to come up as well, that'd be a beautiful mix between industry and the medical system. The data for the highway blockage and the use of a helicopter, we just don't have. There's nothing there to sort of link a data point to that we could find at this point. We could certainly dig a little farther, but I think that what we are going to find is in most places on the highway have a way around. We usually can get an ambulance through, or the ambulance has responded from the other side. So I don't think that's a huge factor in what the helicopter work will be, but I think what we will see is that those, what we would call auto launches for our trauma, will be more frequent, and then we will end up with more meets at the Clearwater Hospital because, as Brent pointed out, the timing is more appropriate, that you don't have these delays that are happening when you're transporting back and forth. So the idea would be if you land at the local helicopter contractor, you would then need an ambulance to go out there, pick up a critical care paramedic crew, bring them to the hospital, then take them back out there. Far more efficient to have them at the hospital. And the idea of meeting is, we're still restricted, of course, by our shift time. Our helicopter in Kamloops is a 7 till 7, but we do end up with those winter hours, as we all know with the time change, that it gets dark pretty early now. So with our capabilities, they'll be able to fly, and I understand, talking with David, that they'll be able to still land there at the heliport at Clearwater, which they wouldn't be able to today. Today, it would be airport to airport for our helicopter, and really to get them out of trouble, not to do responses. If that's correct, Ian.
Yeah, and I would say, just to add to that, we are planning on lighting, and we are planning on, with the lighting, that opens up the possibility of them using NVG or night vision goggles as well. Yeah. I would just maybe add one more circumstance or event. Having lived in the north in forest fire season, and if we ever had a closure of the highway between Clearwater and Kamloops due to fire, you now have an option, at least, to be able to get a patient out to Kamloops, because we've got a heliport there. And the other circumstance, I suppose, or condition that we have here in Clearwater, is that we don't have a fixed wing option for EMS transport. So that puts the onus entirely on the rotary wing side of things. And those two factors kind of tell us. I've been in a situation in Northwest Ontario where It's always been closed from forest fire. And if we ever had a significant event or a mass casualty event, there's no way. The heliport becomes very critical in those kinds of situations.
I'm just going to add one thing there. So right now we're very dependent on Blackpool Fire Department for their ability to secure a landing zone for patient transfers in the area, but it's on private land, right? And so you're at the will or the whim of whoever the private landowner is there on the use of that land. And there's been some stuff going on in the background that every once in a while that makes the Blackpool Fire Department a little bit nervous about it.
Yeah, no, thanks you for bringing that up. I was actually going to bring that point forward that that the primary chunk of private land that they use may or may not be on the market for sale at some time. So, and that has to be a consideration. Councillor Bratton, then, and Councillor Sim, or he answered your question, Councillor Bratton. Councillor Sim.
One has to wonder if the purchase of the Blackpool might be cheaper than what we've been approached with. So in August, we were presented with two plans. One was the dollar value of $465,000, but it was down probably about maybe, let's say, 5-10 minutes. Anybody? Yeah.
Man Park, but requires an ambulance transfer.
Okay, right. So that at 465, and then the one up by the hospital, which would be 695,000. You've brought up Revelstoke. Is the one that they built in 2017, which came in at a dollar value of 475,000, is that the equivalent? Because in the presentation we were given, as we were like size and height and lights and helicopter size, so there was a lot of comparables. So I'm just trying to get a feel for the fact that you have brought Revelstoke forward. Would the gold Cadillac of 695 be the equivalent to what Revelstoke has now?
I can speak to that. It's close. Revelstoke did not have lights installed, and here we're the idea or the thought is to have lighting for night use installed. So Revelstoke is a day only heliport at this point. In terms of size, they're the same size. In terms of lay of the land and topography, very similar. We raised Revelstoke, maybe 1.5 feet, not as much as 2 feet above existing grade. Revelstoke has a one-way in, one-way out heliport or flight path. We don't have any other choice in that scenario. Tree clearing, yeah, there was a significant amount of tree clearing at Revelstoke. So similar in design. We have a much better design going on here from an aviation perspective. From a physical element perspective, the biggest difference is the lights. Revelstoke, they had roughed in underpad heating system, which there's not a plan to do here for Clearwater. So that probably is the trade-off, if you want to call it, to bring us about equal. We have to remember that Revelstoke was constructed probably 4 or 5 years ago now. So we have certainly different environment from the construction cost due to inflation and so on. Yeah, go ahead,
Dave. I just want to bring up one thing from a perspective of in our situation, and Doug, please chime in, and maybe the other interior health people. From our perspective, it's always better to have the pad right by a clinical facility of some sort. Having to have, if it's separated at any sort of distance, you're going to take up a ground ambulance transferring that patient back and forth. Whereas in this scenario, if the patient's in the clinic, you're just going to wheel them right out of the clinic, right into the helicopter, and you're not going to take up a ground ambulance doing that. From our perspective, it's always much better to be beside a clinical facility.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and the other question, I'm not sure if Interior Health, would you guys pay for that, the O&M on that, if it wasn't part of the hospital? That's the other question.
Anybody want to touch that one? Sorry, what was the question? What was the second question, Councillor Sim?
So it actually does lead into to funding. So looking at the Revelstoke project, there was a number of partners, and but I didn't see the health authority in there. So I just wanted to confirm that you were super keen to be financially committed to this.
So I can speak to that. So for Revelstoke, we definitely are fully committed to it in that we are responsible for all the maintenance and any certifications or anything like that that we need to do. We have that responsibility ongoing. As far as the upfront work goes, we did utilize our own staff for project management of the work as it was underway, and coordinated with the local hospital foundation and local donors, because some of the donations were in kind, some were cash. So we used the foundation for that process, and that would be the commitment that Interior Health would have for Clearwater as well, is that we would definitely take the lead on the project management of it. It is on our property, so we would want to make sure that it's being done properly, and we would definitely commit to the ongoing operations costs for making sure it's maintained. If we do get a call that there's incoming, we have to make sure that the helipad's clear, no debris on it, things like that. So we have a full gamut of responsibility once it's built.
May I ask one more?
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I was really hoping, but anyway, that worked out well. The one thing that the Revelstoke does have, which we don't have, is that they've got the Revelstoke District Health Foundation. Was that health foundation developed for the sole purpose of this project, or had it existed beforehand?
It existed ahead of time.
Ahead of time. So
Yes.
it was, because foundations can be incredibly helpful in this type of project.
Definitely.
And I just recognize that would allow donations through auxiliaries and even through other foundations like Royal Inlet or something to maybe also participate financially in this project. Is that kind of how that rolls?
It is, and you brought up Royal Inland. It's interesting because I know that Royal Inland has actually assisted some of our smaller sites in the Thompson area with some of their fundraising campaigns as well. So there might be an opportunity there to leverage working with that foundation, since they already have a structure in place.
Yeah.
And so there might be a possibility there.
Thank you very much.
And on that point, the Royal Inland Hospital Foundation has actually I've actually already had a conversation, and then the hospital board chair has had a conversation about potentially helping with funding on this. But my understanding as well is that the vast majority of the construction costs could be funded through the grant program that Ian was talking about. Is that not correct?
Your worship?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the BC Air Access Program granting is up to 75%, and then an additional 15% for rural communities, which we would qualify for. So that's a total of 90%.
90%, yeah. Potentially. Okay. Cool. Are there any further questions? Are there further comments from the board members? Any points that we missed on this that you'd like to speak to? If not, seeing none, thank you for your time, and thank you all for coming out. That was very informative, and we'll have a hearty discussion later on, I'm quite sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye now.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Moving on to item 8.1, adoption of the minutes of the council meeting. There are two recommendations. Any errors or omissions before we move those recommendations? If not, mover and seconder on one, and well, I guess there are two recommendations, yeah. So recommendation 1 and then recommendation 2 separately. So, moved recommendation 1 by Councillor Herring, second by Councillor McKenzie. Seeing no errors or omissions, if you do, contact staff after the meeting. All those in favor? And that passes. And then there is recommendation 2 for the special council meeting held October 22nd. Moved by Councillor Frizzle, seconded by Councillor Bratton. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. We are moving on to item 11.3. There is a recommendation, and does staff wish to speak to this any further before we go to the recommendation?
Thank you, Your Worship. I can certainly take any additional questions. I believe, I think they covered everything pretty extensively there, but if there's anything that council doesn't feel was addressed from our perspective. Again, this isn't approving the costs. This is just to get it into the 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan.
Right.
We would get pricing on what the actual Class B estimate would cost. The Class B estimate is what's required for the actual BCR Access Program granting. So this would sort of tighten up what the actual cost would be to apply for the grants. Council will still be able to, remove this from the budget at a later process if they don't like the costing.
Okay. Further questions of staff? Any desire for a mover and a seconder on this? Councillor Sim?
I'll make the, move the motion,
Thank
option
you.
1.
And then Councillor Matheson seconds that. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor? And that passes. Do you wish to be noted as opposed? Councillor Herring noted as opposed, please. Okay. Nothing under 12. Item 13, I'm going to keep it short. First thing I'd like to note is the generator has been moved as of about noon today, I believe, to its new location. I'm assuming, which is a new location from what I believe we thought it was going to be. So it's on this side of the building, which is fantastic. Beyond that, on the 26th, I received the first copy of the season from the Legion. I'd like to thank Wayne for coming out and doing that. And the only other thing that I'll note at this time is the day before the BC, or 2 days before the BC election, I attended Ms. Pierce's 5-6 class to top government. Yeah, the seniors crowd is a tough crowd for questions. The grade 5-6 class are super energetic, and boy, do they have questions. But I'm gonna probably get another counselor to go with me next year if it comes up again, and I think you'd absolutely love doing this. So that's basically it for me this time. Councillor Bratton.
I don't have too much to report. Been busy with personal commitments, doing class photos and school photos this year, which has been super fun, and attended agenda setting last Wednesday with first time with Mr. Johnson, so that was great. Thank you. And just Remembrance Day is coming up, and I'm not sure, Indigenous Remembrance Day, if we have anything planned that way or not.
Good question.
November 8th, I do believe that is. So anyways, and that's all I have to mention today.
Thank you for the reminder on Indigenous Remembrance Day. Councillor Fizzle.
Thank you. I attended the Tourism Wells Gray meeting last week, a couple of weeks ago, and they just gave us all the information and all the tough season that they had this last year, and that they're looking towards opening more in the following year and taking over the retail space. So there's all that is happening in their corner of the world right now. I also attended the outdoor school opening, which was really fantastic. Unfortunately, it poured with rain, and we had to do it in the gym instead of at the new school. But there's a lot of enthusiasm from the kids, and they are really looking forward to using that over the years. And I also last week attended the asset management seminar that Silga had, and I'm really glad I did that, because I learned a lot from that, and I finally think I have it all figured out sort of in my mind. So yeah, that was good. So that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Herring.
No report for me this time.
Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Blackwell. Nothing to report this time from me either.
Hey, Councillor Matheson.
It was a fairly quiet week. I attended the outdoor school opening, and as Councillor Fizzle said, it was quite an event, a very wet one. But there was still a good amount of people that showed up, a lot of enthusiasm toward it, a lot of great comments about it, and I'm so impressed by the building and the community effort that went into getting that happening. And it really highlights our community and kind of feeds into the whole theme of us being an outdoor destination, and it's reflected in the education. I think it's really cool. I also went to the Silga event with the asset management, and I'm still trying to retain it all in my head. And it was very informative, and I've got a million questions for Linda.
Sorry about that. Councillor Sim.
Thanks very much. I think that we need to have a huge shout out for the Halloween fireworks for the fire department. It's actually I work with some of the UBC resident doctors and was telling them about Halloween and how the concept is that Halloween kind of starts and then it shuts down because the fireworks are such a big thing. And I don't think that there was any greater joy than hearing the small kids next to us who were like, oh, that was the best one. Oh no, that was the best one. But it just does provide another opportunity for this community to come together to gather, and that we can celebrate those types of great moments. So thank you for the fire department and also for Wells Gray Search and Rescue, who was very keen to come out there. Also to the outdoor classroom, it does speak, even in the light of the request for the helipad, is that was a $250,000 project that this community was able to raise funds for. And to your point about it being an outdoor destination, Thompson Rivers University and SD 73 now have a joint class that involves the Wells Gray Research Center up in the park. So lots of different opportunities here. Curling is up and going, so lots of interest there, and really fun to see people who are dusting off their brooms for that. This week, I'm actually heading off after this meeting to go to the Family Medicine Forum in Vancouver, which is seeing physicians from all over Canada. So that's going to be quite a thing affair, but I will be sorry to miss Remembrance Day here. And it also, I just had an email with an inquiry, and it ties in again to the helipad, about is it time that we look to having our own health foundation here in Clearwater? We've got a number of opportunities of, the fundraising that we may or may not be required to do. We've got requests always just to support different people that are coming in, whether that be for recruitment. And Royal Inland Hospital Foundation, they've just got an absolutely incredible mechanism. We're being asked to support nurses who are coming here. Now, we've got vacancies for, last I heard, and Mayor Blackwell, you can correct me, of up to 15, which is for nursing staff here.
Yeah, that's news to me.
Let's say 8. Just.
I think 8 is probably generally where 8 to 10 is where we usually float for open lines right now, which there needs to be discussion on whether or not some of those are made part-time.
Yeah, there's some real work that has to be done, but a hospital foundation might be something that could actually capture a lot of these needs. And I just attended a meeting of different communities all over BC and looking at the retention for practice-ready assessments, which is the number of physicians that we've had here. And just that retention piece is so important, and needing a body that can look after that. The Chamber of Commerce stepped up for a short while there. They had written a grant and council supported that. But what is an organizational body that might be able to step in? So anyway, that's my wonder after the presentation today. Thanks.
Thank you. I skipped past it because Director Zhao isn't usually here, but I'd like to acknowledge that under item 6, Director Zhao is present today, and thank you for coming out today. Would you like to say any? You can come to the mic if you like to say, because we do offer you that space. So.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will try to make this a habit. Thank you for the time today, and I appreciate always our joint advocacy projects such as the helipad. And actually, on that note, I noticed that there were a few questions with regards to Blackpool, and very good point that I would have liked to raise, that it is on private land right now, and our Blackpool Fire and Rescue, they also do road rescue, so our volunteers are stretch a bit thin, especially during the wintertime with the response to road incidences. So any way that we can support them, I think we should pursue jointly. Because, and just to give council more background, Mayor Blackwell is aware of this. For this grants for the study initially last year, our Blackpool Fire Chief actually did want to apply for this, and but we agreed jointly between myself and Mayor Blackwell and TNRD staff that the location would probably be the best next to a hospital. So yes, I would, just here to listen to how you guys are getting on with it. And if you have ever any questions about Area A matters, my email, I'm always around town, just let me know. And if I'm not, sorry, apologies if I'm mistaken, Mr. Johnson. Yes, welcome to North Thompson. I'm Yusuf, Area A rep for the Thompson-Nicola Regional Districts. So welcome to the area and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Note in that Blackpool is certified to do air ambulance landing, but District of Clearwater fire crew is as well now, is my understanding. Correct on that, Mr. Prime? You were just going to put your hand in to verify
Thank
that?
you, Your Worship. Yeah, we do training annually for helipad landings.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anything under item 15, CAO reporting? No, not at this time, Mr. Johnson. We keep doing Mr. Johnson's here for CAOs. It's 2 in a row now, which just makes it easier. Saves on email and business cards. Moving on to item 16.1, and I believe staff are going to speak to a road maintenance contract and a recommendation of award. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this has been a long, slow process for the district. And I just want to give a bit of history before we get to the recommendation, but just so we're framing it up front, we did have 2 bids which were evaluated, Boro Enterprises for $799,000 annually, plus Black River Contracting for $582,000. It's both listed on your report on page 61. So as mentioned, it's been a long process to get to the point of awarding the road maintenance contract. The original RFP was issued in May with a closing date in June. There were several extensions granted. Any interested bidder should have had the sufficient time to submit a bid. There was a point in time actually in this process where the district was not even sure if we would end up with a qualified bid. At that point, staff did consider a couple of options, including issuing a 1-year contract to a completely different company to allow more time for an extended process. And we also considered the feasibility of doing the work in-house. Both of those options, though, had a really significant cost impact, like hugely significant, and the quality of work and quality of service would have been would have definitely shown some growing pains if you bring people inexperienced with urban road clearing and road maintenance to try to work on your roads. I venture to say that probably the curbs and sidewalks might have been somewhat unrecognizable after that first year. So multiple bidders reviewed the RFP issued by the district. As of the closing date on the bid, we received 2 bids, Boro Enterprises and Black River Contracting. It should also be noted that even though Black River Contracting was let go from the previous road contract by the district, they were not specifically disqualified from bidding. Bids are evaluated based on multiple factors, including capabilities, experience, and price. And under the capabilities and experience category, there's a number of questions. So it's not just are you capable, it's can you do this and this and this and this. So evaluated on a whole number of factors. And based on the criteria stated in the RFP, Boro Enterprises was the successful bidder. Since a notification to Boro Enterprises of being the top bid, the district and Boro Enterprises have had a number of discussions about contractual language. That's specifically allowed under Section 23 of the contract. So we did have a lot of talk about the language of the contract. Working together, the contract was reviewed to clean up ambiguous language in the contract. In my opinion, it's a much more tighter, more concise document with removing ambiguous language, which tends to be the things you argue about at a future date if there's a disagreement. Plus, the improved language should actually help to streamline the approval process. One example of that is to take care of dangerous situations on district roads. For example, if there's rock falls on the road or other hazardous conditions, we've worked together to try to streamline that approval process to make sure that those are taken care of as expeditiously as possible. And that's obviously to the benefit of everyone who uses the roads. So better safety outcomes due to working on that language in the contract. After having said all that, the deliverables issued under the contract are substantially similar to the RFP. Same contract term, 3 years with 2 potential annual rollovers, the same frequencies roughly for summer work, the same road priorities, and the same trigger points for snow clearing operations. It also contains the same language about performance management and the potentials if there's performance issues and how we deal with that. And it should be noted that the pricing for the term of the contract is the same as in the RFP. So there hasn't been any price increase. It's the same as the submitted RFP. So the recommendation from staff is that council award Boro Enterprises a 3-year road maintenance contract with 2 possible 1-year extensions in the amount of $799,049 for the first year, with a CPI increase for each of the following years, and that the mayor and chief administrative officer are hereby authorized to execute the necessary documents.
Okay,
Thank
you. Questions from council on this? Councillor Matheson.
Just to clarify, this fall, was the district at risk at any point for not having snow removal services available?
The district was not at risk. We actually had an arrangement with Boro Enterprises that if it had snowed, that they would manage the snow clearing. So that never was triggered because we didn't have a snow event, but it was there in place to ensure the safety of our public.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? If not, can I get a mover and a seconder, or was council desire? Moved by Councillor Matheson, seconder. Councillor Frizzle, further discussion? Not, all those in favor? And that passes. Councillor Bratton, can you let Councillor Sim know to come back in? Oh, she can know. Moving on to item 16.2, there are multiple recommendations under draft council schedule. Mr. Prime, I think you did some of the work on this. Would you like to speak to this at all?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. What we have before you is the draft schedule. This does follow in line with previous years in council procedure bylaw. The only real addition is that we've once again added another meeting, a second meeting in December, much like we have this year, as we do find that we keep needing that second meeting in December to address usually utilities bylaws at that point in time. This schedule does incorporate sort of the budget workshops throughout the year for the finance department, which may be revised at a later date, but this schedule will be kept a living document to keep on your fridge as requested. I'll take any questions.
Any questions on this? Councillor Sim, I see you touching your mic, so go ahead.
I want to thank you very much for putting together this calendar. It was really thoughtfully done, and you can tell that you went into all the corners of all the various calendars that go on, including the TNRD. So really what comes out of it is we need 8 days in a week and not 7. There are a couple of dates where the meetings fall after a long weekend, and I think council has maybe felt that that's sometimes problematic. But I can't see another way to get around it. But what I did wonder is if there was a way that we could maybe move agenda setting so that agendas could be out on the Thursday before that meeting.
Yes, Councillor Sim through Mayor Blackwell. Agenda setting can certainly be moved up a bit, as well as, we have been working to try and get the agendas out earlier than Friday at 7 o'clock. That is an ongoing battle that I will fight dearly. If it's the will of council to get these out on Thursday for 2025, we can absolutely address our processes to get that out earlier.
Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to say is that according to the council procedure bylaw is that we need 2 days. But if we're still working on that, it's not really 2 days when it's a long weekend. So it does need to be a Thursday. so that we are getting that out, so that there is the opportunity for council to ask staff any questions on the Friday. So if we're going to go forward with this schedule, then we need to amend when we're doing the agenda setting, and just move it backwards.
Yeah, and I've had this discussion with the new CAO and said that we do really need to get these out in advance. Mr. Johnson, you want to comment on that at all?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is a priority, and we've had discussions at the staff level about what it takes to move towards that earlier agenda date. Personally, I would like to see if we could get to, on a regular basis, agendas out on Thursday. So I can't make a commitment at this point for every single item, because as some things are very much a work in process as you're heading into the council meeting. But that is the direction I want to head, and we will commit to making progress on that over the near future. I can't commit to it's always going to be Thursday, but we're working towards that.
Okay. Further questions or comments on this? Councillor Frizzle?
I just wanted to thank you as well. Although I have most of these dates in my calendar and my phone, I really do appreciate the visuals. It really does stand out, and it really make it sink into your brain that you do have a meeting. Yeah. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Councillor Bratton, did you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you very much. I appreciate this. And I also have, I don't know what the other councillors feel, but I like the set proposed schedule for us acting mayors, because then it gives me 3 on the other one, and I don't want that. I like having 2.
But that is a good discussion. You do have that schedule in front of you.
The set one, not the wonky one.
So there's the scrambled one.
Scrambled, that's the
There's
word.
two proposed versions there.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I did propose to, just because, in case people are, councillors are tired of always having a particular month where they have to be available. So that was my thought reasoning there, to just scramble it up a bit. But it's certainly the will of council.
And, I'm all in favor of if people wish to trade months, maybe do that after this meeting, have a discussion, with Mr. Prime, to say, hey, this month doesn't work for me, I'm on holidays this month, or this is a very busy work month for me, or something along those lines. I think that's absolutely fair. Councillor Sim.
So as we go into this sort of new calendar, and we've got the committee of the whole, I am hoping that as part of how council redefines itself, is I went over the last year, and we had 6 of the committee of the wholes were all about the financial plan. But we were skirted over things like parks. We did the Sportsplex presentation. We did the permissive tax, and then we had the cemetery feedback. But we didn't have a lot on infrastructure to do. And then what I do wonder is I do hold it quite important that the committee for the arts that we talked about, where do we fit that in? Like, how do we come up with a schedule where people know what's going to be addressed and when they can count on it? I thought it was really interesting that there's been quite a fervor over the Remembrance Day visuals, whether that be a mural or otherwise, which would tie in really nicely to this proposed committee. But we have to carve out that time. And we used to actually have schedules for it. And I don't know where we're going with that, or if that's something that maybe council needs to do as part of their strategic refresh. But there are specific projects, even our Dutch Lake Corridor. Where does that fit into, our committees of the whole? Because now it's just this generic home situation that we've lost track. And how do we redefine that?
Yeah, thank you. Any comments from staff? I'll start with, there's been a proposal, discussion with the CAO and the Director of Finance of potentially starting a finance committee of just 2 or 3 members of council and staff, which should help clear up some space in the committee of the whole in general. That would be a separate set of meetings. I think that's a great idea because we are sort of heavy finance focused. But yes, you're absolutely right. We do need to start understanding what we have going on here as far as projects and what sort of priorities the community wants to be pushing forward. So defining it in a schedule, I think we need to have a discussion about that as a council. And maybe part of that strategic plan refresh. I think that's a great time. I don't want to do it on the fly right here today, but I do hear you, and I do think that's important that we start carving out time to talk about specific sections of what we do.
And just even the fact that we've got 3 standing committees: government operations, community dev and infrastructure, parks, rec, and social development. I mean, we do have some able to take that position for economic development. And where does their findings and report land? Like, just, having that. So I do note that September 2nd was slated for the strategic plan refresh. Was there any thought about doing it beforehand as part of the budget process? Just to redefine some of these goals and objectives, and maybe to encapsulate what might come about.
Mr. Prime, I think you want to talk on a different topic.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and through to Councillor Sim. I'll try and touch on a couple of these topics. Going back to the public art policy and sort of how that was moving forward, that is coming at the quarterly strategic plan update in December. So that'll be the first meeting in December 5th, which isn't on this year. You'll see we've planned them out into future quarters, March 4th being the one after that. But that update in December was going to bring forward the timeline for how the public art policy and committee and how that implementation was going to roll out for that. As well, just to comment, the standing committees of council, the government operations, those are actually repealed a while back when we did our committee restructure. So we have just the one committee of the whole. So anything that does come up, infrastructure, public art, goes to the one committee of the whole. And it's really just topic based. If there is something to put on the agenda, then it will go on the agenda. So they're being scheduled for that. However, if there is nothing, then they are sort of canceled at that time. And that's up to certainly staff, certainly council's direction in terms of what they want to see.
Okay, Councillor Herring.
Yeah, I just want to lend my voice to Councillor Sim's point. I think that, I am aware that we repealed that and went to a general committee of the whole. But for me, I'm feeling like it's not really working in terms of I'm struggling to stay on top of some of the big pieces of work we do and have that time to have big discussions. Like when we had an infrastructure meeting and it could all be pushed, all infrastructure issues were brought to that meeting. It allowed us time for a really in-depth look at infrastructure. And as a councillor, it's a reminder of where we're at with things like our infrastructure master plan or how it relates to our DCC bylaw, all that kind of thing. Those are deep level conversations that I'd like to sort of reignite in the next area of council. So personally, I would definitely support that. I think I would love to see, I know it can't be done today, but committee of the whole, October 7th, infrastructure.
Exactly.
June finance, right? And just to bring it back to that type of structured place for it.
Yeah, no, I agree. CEO Johnson would like to speak to that, but I think you all have the ability to have a meeting with him this week or early next week, and I think these ideas should be fleshed out there for sure. Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a couple of points. With regards to the Finance Committee, I used to use this actual structure in my last job, a finance committee, and it was pretty effective. And because it's finance is kind of writ large, we would deal with infrastructure and things like that at the finance committee because there's such a huge component to it, right? Having said that, I've been in discussions with the director of finance about when do we start up a finance committee for this year relative to our budget, and we haven't reached a full understanding of what the best time is, so there may be a bit of a delay, and I need to work within what our existing processes are too. So the startup on a finance committee is a bit up in the air, but I think it could solve a lot of the issues where someone needs to dig into issues on council, but you don't need to tie up committee of the whole meetings to do that necessarily. With regards to the strategic planning process, councillors, I think you're exactly correct. We do, even if it's for my own purpose of understanding where council's strategic plan is at. And I envision more than just a quarterly update. I would like to engage with council at more of a deeper level on strategic planning. What are we trying to achieve? And I think I need to work with the mayor on that to figure out what timing works and kind of the process for that. But it's an area where I recognize that we have a need, and the need not only by council to refine his strategic plan, but so myself as a staff member can help to drive that strategic plan through the rest of the organization.
Thank you. And I think you've actually now clarified what the blue circles mean as it's just the update on the strategic plan. It is not actually for council to do that. Am I understanding that correctly? So to work on some of that planning, it would be outside of those dates. So I don't have to worry about coming back on September 2nd after summer to a strategic.
Yeah, I know. I think in your discussions with the CAO this week, and I'm in favor of this, is the CAO has only been on the job here for 4 weeks and a day. Seems like forever, I'm quite sure. But yeah, I would like to see at least some group conversations about the strategic plan, if not a revision of it, to decide, hey, what still matters here and what kind of things we'd like to discuss adding to the plan at a future date. Nothing set in stone, but let's throw some spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. So any further discussions on this? So there is a recommendation, 3 parts. Do we want to move this for now? And of course it obviously can be adjusted and edited in the future. Nothing set in stone. Councillor Sim?
So I'll make the recommendations, but noting to not keep it in stone, because I am excited about if we can go back to that committee structure and then having a committee chair, doing something along that allows, each council person to get further into the work and have that understanding. To just do it as an acting mayor, a committee of the whole, you're just getting your feet wet, and then you run back for your towel. So I will, knowing that we will likely revisit this. So moving the motion.
Okay, moving the motion. Seconder on the motion.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Further discussion among council? Councillor Frizzle.
Should we add on to that, specifying that it's option A for the acting mayor?
Yes, good point. Do we want to do a scramble with potential horse trading, or do you want to do the set proposed, which is by order of your last name?
Well, if we're going to bring it all back, I think because it's in front of us now, it's easy to pass this motion. It sounds like we are all, leaning towards having that discussion. At that time, I'd love to scramble it. I'd like to scramble a lot of things. And I also think we should scramble our seating and change perspectives.
PNRD does that every 2 years. It could be done for sure.
Okay, yeah.
We're at the 2-year mark. That's could be a conversation for sure. So are we stating we're not going to include A or B? We're going to have that discussion later? Just
to move this along, because I think that
you want to select A for this point, and
going to go for A.
Okay, so with A specified, and it's already seconded by Councillor McKenzie. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Okay, and that passes. Thank you. Item 16.3, financial plan, capital and special projects. I'm assuming that Ms. Klassen will want to speak to this for a second.
I have a short presentation. So in this presentation, or at the end of the presentation, I have 3 resolutions. One resolution basically says council is happy with what staff has presented, and they support staff going to public consultation. The second resolution I have prepared here as an option is that council directs staff to research a certain project name by a date and bring it back to council for consideration in the financial plan, such as the helipad would have been one of those. And the third resolution I have prepared is for council to direct staff to remove a project. You just provide the name and the number on the project list. So moving forward, at the last workshop that we had, staff has been working together to finalize the project list. So these are the changes that we've made so far. We have updated the Park Drive lift station for 2026 to $1.3 million. We have moved the facilities master plan forward to 2025 from 2026. And I think CEO Johnson would like to make a quick comment on that.
Thank you. Yes, with the facilities master plan is one of those areas we need to do some pretty significant strategic thinking on. There's lots of issues there. So we put it into 2025 as a placeholder, and it's funded by surplus, so it won't have a immediate taxation impact. But I'm not sure if we'll actually get to it because, like I said, we need to have some pretty substantive strategic discussions about where we want our facilities, what new facilities do we need? Do we need unified facilities? What are the options, right? And there's a lot of options out there, and I think staff needs to do some work on that and bring it to a strategic session. Thank you.
Thank you. The third project, we added a roadway assessment project for about $54,000. We defined the OCP project that that council had recommended, I think, at the workshop for about $70,000, and it's funded with local government housing initiative grant that we have. We have added a watercourse bylaw and updated subdivision bylaw for $146,000, which is also grant funded. And we removed a project which we were just kind of playing with projects and was entered by mistake. So those are the projects that we have changed since the workshop. Does council have any questions on those changes?
Okay, any questions? I'm happy to see the road assessment on there. We definitely need to do that. We have so much feedback on Dunn Lake Road specifically that we need to have a conversation about how we start resolving specifically that issue among others. So having an assessment and understanding the full scope of what we have going on out there with roads is, I think, critically important. So thank you. Further questions or comments? Councillor Frizzle.
For the OCP project, it's down to 70,000 and funded by the local government. Do we have that now, or do we have to apply for that?
We have that money now.
We do have it now, okay.
Just a few highlights that we have here. Total expenditures for the 5 years for capital is $12.5 million. And they're funded by a majority of grants, so 33% grant and 22% reserves. And on the capital project side, 41% debt, because we have some large projects in future years that we need to find funding for. On the capital side for 2025, we have a $4.3 million expenditure just for 2025. And of those 10 projects, 5 are carried forward. And 87% of those are funded by grants, 8% by reserves, and 1% from surplus, and 4% I have labeled it as mixed resources. And that basically is the Zamboni, which has a proceeds of insurance component as well as a grant component. On the special projects side, those are projects that are not capital in nature. They're not a thing. They're usually a study of some sort. We use that side of it for preliminary reviews or studies for larger projects. Total expenditure for 5 years is $2 million. And those are funded by grants, certain operating reserves of 30%, 27% surplus, a small portion of 2% taxation, and again, mixed funds. Focusing only on 2025, we have expenditures of special projects for $1.5 million. Many projects, 16 of them, however, 5 of them are carried forward. If you recall last year, I think those numbers were 20s, in the 20s. We had 46 projects that we were trying to juggle. So the project plan that you see in front of you is more realistic than 46. And the 2025 special projects are funded 43% by grants, 16% by reserves, 33% by surplus, and 8% mixed sources. We have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, finish, thanks.
Okay, just a pie chart, just to have a look at where we're actually spending the money. And I realize when I look here that you can't really see that. However, transportation, you see a large 90% of our capital projects is transportation, and that is the bridge, the bridge where we're going to improve the abutments. That is a $3 million project, and it's all funded by grants.
For clarity of the audience, that's the bridge out in front here that
Yes.
needs abutment repairs.
Correct.
For protection of the bridge space because of erosion, etc. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And the green slice there, that's the next slice, that's the Zamboni for $175,000. And all the other ones are pretty small, but there's a lot of really important projects in there. Looking at the special projects, we again have pretty equal slices of the pie, so to speak. But the large one there is the sewer, so that's the carryover for the desludging of cell number 2, I believe. And again, we have protection is $100,000, planning and development is $200,000, and transportation is $234,000. So it's a little bit more even across the board there, and the facilities master plan is in the blue slice under general government. A part of our project that we're getting ready for is public consultation. So staff met with the fire chief and with the corporate officer, and we are recommending that we have a public consultation event with the Ski Hill Craft event. That is just, no. I'm open to.
There's no space. I'm so.
We have a table.
No, you don't.
Do we not?
No.
Did they not? You book a table?
I thought we did.
No.
Oh,
no, I organize it.
I was under the understanding that we did book
I'm
a table.
so sorry. I have space for you outside.
In the bar?
Yeah, well, I can make it available. The glue vine could go out there. I'm so sorry.
This is new information.
I'm so
This
sorry.
derails the whole plan. Anyways.
But we will look
Pivot.
for an appropriate space for public consultation if it's not the Ski Hill Craft event. Regardless of that, we will be preparing a survey. We will be preparing communications as well. Not just the event, is communications often and accurate is what I hear is really important. So we'll continue to do that, and we'll find another space for the public consultation. Moving ahead, this is our timeline. So the green is what staff is doing, and the black is what council will be thinking through. So that we're going to be preparing the operating plan for water and sewer in November, because those bylaws need to be done by the end of 2024. We'll develop the public engagement material and the communication material. We'll bring the water and sewer rates bylaw to council for readings and discussion and adoption in December 2024. So I have in front of you those 3 resolutions.
Councillor Sim, did you have a question before we do this?
I did. I noticed that we keep hoping that our tennis court fits are going to be subject to a grant. But I don't know what the plans are for grants or where they are for grants. But would it be appropriate to ask that, very similar to what we did with the roads, is we keep, saving money each year for when they do need to be replaced. We can't, that's not an area I'm comfortable of just relying on grants, because it's a good asset and we're seeing lots of use, especially with the pickleball. But to just be reliant on grants, unless Pickleball Canada exists, I don't know, but where is the grant going to come from? We can't just say it. Like, where is it? Is there an eye on that?
We don't have a grant applied for at this time.
Yeah. That's why I'm wondering do we put in small amounts just to start building up some sort of a reserve for when we do need to do it?
We don't have a recreation reserve, but we can probably take some from surplus if that's what's required.
Okay, I think you can take this offline and have a
Yeah,
discussion
that's fine. I'm just asking in terms of its capital.
As somebody who quite recently was in a room full of grade 5, 6s who requested that the tennis court be eliminated for expansion of the skate park, which is now boring. There are public consultation on this is going to be important, but yes, I mean, is there a need for a recreation reserve where we can, there's a lot of recreation grants that are available,
Mhm.
but how do we deal with those? And how do we seed fund those? So, yeah.
Right.
I would take that to Mr. Johnson as part of your conversation with him.
We're going to need more than an hour, I can tell.
Yeah, I think you probably will. You might need a couple of days and maybe lunch in between.
My second question relates to the Dutch Lake corridor that we've talked about around this table. We still haven't gotten that quite right. I don't know if that falls under the study or if that falls under like a transportation or an active transportation grant, but I'm assuming that there's maybe going to be some need to address that. So I don't know where that fits into the budget.
Currently, we have in our special projects, we have a Dutch Lake Corridor concept proposal study. It's for $32,000. We would probably need more guidance from council on what their vision is in that area.
But I think that's what another thing that was going out to the community.
Yeah.
Because I think they've got lots of ideas.
Yeah.
And sort of how to bring that in. But again, if there's going to be anything that's done for this coming spring, do we need to look at some sort of line on it? And we don't have to do that today because it is just sort of moving forward. But I do want to flag it that that's been of particular attention.
Yep, thank you. Anybody else? Other councillors, comments? So there is a recommendation. Sorry, I don't, you have the three as part of your thing here, but we don't have them on our report, I don't think. So the recommendation that we have sitting here, oh no, you're right, sorry. Nope.
You only have the one I've provided you if there is any.
Okay.
This is the one that we originally.
This is the one that's on the agenda.
I just want to make it.
Yeah. So there's the
easier
options
if
to
council
okay,
would like to add anything. Let's add something. If council would like to remove something, let's remove something before we go out.
Okay. So that brings it back to what's the desire of council. You can either remove the standard recommendation that council support staff to bring the draft 2025 project plan as presented to public consultation, or you can add or subtract something from that, or you can wait for the end of this week and have your conversations with Mr. Johnson, and he can have a discussion with staff about specific items that you'd like to have more conversation on. Councillor Herring.
Yeah, I'm comfortable moving option one, just with the note that this is for the public to comment on, right? So this is just the initial plan. There's going to be future discussion. This is more just to get the conversation started in the public. So I'll move option one.
I seconded by Councillor Frizzle. Discussion? If not, all those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. Thank you for your report and all the work involved in that. Nothing under bylaws. There is correspondence from Kofi. We do get a free registration package for that. Is anybody wishing to attend Kofi this year? And if you do, I would speak to Mr. Prime or Mr. Johnson, and that can probably happen. I believe Councillor McKenzie has attended multiple times.
Yeah, except this year.
Except for this year. Okay, cool. Thank you.
What's that? For Kofi.
Kofi's pretty important. I may attend this year if nobody else picks it up, just because it's been,
If they're offering that, we may as well.
Yeah, I haven't attended one in quite a long time, I think, if ever. No notices of motion. Comments from the public. Questions? Okay, seeing none. We do have the need to move into in camera. There's a recommendation that a meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91 of the community charter to discuss matters really. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, the in-camera meeting's been canceled.
Oh, it has been canceled. Okay, thank you. So, motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Matheson, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. All in favor? Okay. Thank you.